Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. In today's video we're going to repot my Cymbidium. This is the last of the Cymbidiums to be repotted for some considerable time because they all got done at the beginning of last year and they're basically in bark, so the media is not going to go off for some considerable time. However, there are other reasons for repotting a Cymbidium. Number one, the media is going off. Well, in my case that's probably not the case, not for some time anyway. Number two, it's outgrown its pot, yeah? So there's no room for new growth. Number three, although the plant hasn't outgrown the pot, the roots have, and the roots have pushed the plant right up out of the pot, making it very, very difficult to water because the water just runs off the sides. So let's swing the camera around and have a look at the one in question. It's a medium to large size Cymbidium. So I'll just swing the camera around and take it down a bit, I think, so you can see what I'm doing. Somewhere about there. Yes, somewhere about there. That'll be fine. Right, now this Cymbidium has not quite outgrown its pot yet, but it is pushing the plant out of the pot. This is very difficult to water at the moment because the water just runs off the sides. In addition to that, if we start there where my finger is, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in there, 5, 6 new growths that are all going to get to bulbs like this. You add 6 more bulbs into that pot and it will have outgrown its pot. So it would have outgrown its pot by the end of this year. So it would have come round for a repot anyway. Right, I've got my heavy duty secateurs in case there's any big stuff to prune, and my scissors. They've been in sterilising, so they're ready to go. Now, under normal circumstances I sterilise my scissors before I put them away, and the main reason for that is I never know what I'm going to do with them or when I'm going to do it. So if they're permanently sterile, I don't have to worry about trimming one plant and then going to the next one. Right, now this one is an unnamed hybrid. Now Cymbidiums come from Asia basically, so from India, foothills of the Himalayas, right round to China and down into Australia effectively. Some are epiphytes, some are terrestrials. Some can be found as both, so they can be found in forks on trees, you know, in sort of moss and stuff like that. They can also be found on mossy banks actually growing in the ground. So some are either or, some can be both. And believe it or not, given the variety of Cymbidiums you see, there's only about 50 actual species. It's nowhere near as many as I thought, I must admit. So all of the hybrids have come from those 50. Now I'm hoping this is going to come out of the pot, because I don't want to have to cut the pot, but then I don't want to damage my new growth either. There's only one root hanging out the bottom. That's not going to hold it in place, so I'm going to pull it out by the leaves if I can. Nope. Right, I shall go and get a knife. I'll be back. Right, this might not work. I did actually forget that I do need a very sharp knife in case I need to cut into the rhizome and cut old roots off. So, but I've got a blunt knife to see if I can run this down the side of the pot and just loosen the plant. The problem I've got is the new growths. And obviously I don't want to damage those. So I'm just going to drop the knife down in several places, wiggle it from side to side, You see what I'm doing here? And just move around a bit more. Whoops. Well, the pot's cracked now. In fact, I'm already fed up. This is a very small Cymbidium pot, so I'm just going to break it if I can. Incredibly strong. But then this is an incredibly sharp knife, so that should have loosened it enough to break it off. I'm desperately trying to be careful not to damage these new growths sticking up. They are so easy to catch. And if you are using a bit of brute force, which you often do have to do with Cymbidiums, and you have an incredibly sharp knife in your hand, do take care, won't you? Because a sharp knife can slip very easily, and I don't want people who are repotting Cymbidiums with 3 fingers on their hand, so go careful. Right, should lift out now. There we go. Right, now we've got an absolute solid mass of roots. Now, prior to doing anything with this, it's going to be difficult to know what to do with this, because these roots are not going to tease apart very easily, I don't think. They might do, but again, I'm being very careful with my top hand to stay up in the leaves and not get down amongst where those new... In fact, all of these lower roots, they can come off. I watched Jim Durrant at what was McBean's when the video was made. He's now at the Mathers Foundation, and his treatment when he repots Cymbidiums, bearing in mind he's been hybridising, breeding for about 40 years in the game, he's brutal. He basically takes the thing out of the pot and just hacks away at the roots until that the only roots left are those that are underneath the latest growths. So all the roots that are under older parts of the plant he just cuts off. There's no ceremony or anything, it just hack. And basically some of the pots, some of the plants that he repots, they don't seem to have many roots left by the time he's finished. And he basically says, after he's repotted, you don't feed for a couple of months and let the plant search for food, and in doing so it will generate a new root system very quickly. This is where I want to get up in there. Can't see what I'm doing, but unfortunately I'm right-handed. I don't work so good with my left hand. Right, I'm going to push the knife up in there and take it round. Like that. And then hopefully that centre section will drop down. That's better. Now we can break some of this out. So the best thing for this plant would be to split it in two, you know. Would probably grow on an awful lot better. But then I'd have two Cymbidiums the same rather than one nice big specimen Cymbidium. Like I said, there's 6 new growths on this plant, so potentially that's 6 spikes next time round. If I cut it in half, they'll still be viable plants, they'll still be flowering size, but they certainly won't be producing 6 bulbs. Right, I'm just going to cut the loose roots off. And then I'm going to have a look for any that are obviously rotting. And I'm just going to do that a bit at a time. With Cymbidium roots, a damaged root will often shoot out above the damaged portion, so you don't have to worry too much. Any roots that you cut are also liable to shoot out, so you can be quite rough with them. Right, although I haven't got all the old media out, it doesn't matter because it's going in a bigger pot. Now Jim, again, when he repots, he puts it in the smallest pot he can get it in. But then he's quite happy to repot it again next year if it fills the pot, whereas I'm not. I want this plant to sit in the pot it goes in now for as many years as possible before it fills the pot. So this would be a bit silly actually putting it in a really small pot. Right, so we've got enough of the old roots out for the new roots to find some space in the new pot. So I'm just going to put that in the new pot now so that it's out of the way, because I've got some sorting out to do here. Remember what I said, that many Cymbidiums are terrestrials, some are epiphytes, some are a combination of both, and one of the best medias to incorporate in your pot is peat. Now, ethically, we don't use peat anymore, do we? Unfortunately, there are some plants that object to substitutes, and the substitutes just don't work as well as the real thing. Now, I don't know what this is, whether it is the real thing or not, but whatever it is, that plant was doing well in it, and I'm going to use bark, but I would like some of this peat mixed in with it so that I'm heading towards a terrestrial mix without actually getting there, because I'm not going to be growing in the nursery where that came from. So I was just trying to get as many of these bits of root out as possible so that we've just got the peat left, if it is peat. If it's a peat substitute, as I say, that plant was doing okay in it. Right, so there's a lot of roots taken off, which means there's now a lot of room that there wasn't before for new roots to grow into new media. Doesn't matter if I miss a few bits, I just want to get the worst of it. That'll do, and then I shall mix this in with my bark and perlite. So I shall have a bit of a clear up, and then I'll be back and we'll get it in a pot. Okay, so we've got this amount of peaty compost, I'll call it. I don't know whether it is peat. And then basically the bulk of the rest is going to be small bark. It's going in quite a big pot. You'd be surprised. I remember listening to somebody who said, I've got a dozen Cymbidiums to repot this weekend and I've got 3 sacks of bark. You can use up a lot of media, an awful lot, repotting Cymbidiums. And then to that I'm going to add some perlite. Deep breath. Breathe out and breathe back in again. The dust from perlite is harmful if you breathe it in. Now the big bits don't really have any dust, but in that tub there is dust. And I need a bit more, so deep breath again. If you are really worried, then wear a mask. Just get a mask. Most people have still got a cupboard full of masks from a certain thing that was going on a few years ago. But yeah, those masks will be fine for this. Now that's about right, I think. It's got some peat in there, that'll hold extra moisture. The perlite does as well, and helps aerate. And we've got small bark. If I used medium or large bark, we'd be moving away from the terrestrial mix, wouldn't we? Right, now the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some very large chunky rock hard bark in the bottom of the pot for crops. And that's because this is a deeper pot than before, so the roots won't go right down to the bottom yet. But my Cymbidiums are going to go outside in the summer. They will get rained on. They could get very, very wet. It's got to drain. The pot must drain. When you're growing in greenhouses and places like that, you can control how much water, but not when you're growing outside and it rains on them. So I'm just going to put a handful up in that bottom. Right. 2 important things. Try and work out where's the best place, leaving the space for the new growths first, and then make sure that the plant is deep enough that you're going to be able to water it and it not all flow out the sides. Don't need to press down, not with Cymbidiums. Just tap it down in. It will find all the gaps. Now, what would be another reason for me to repot a Cymbidium? If I get another one. I probably won't get any more on the grounds that, you know, they do have to come indoors for the winter, and there's only so much room in here, so I don't want to go too mad, but I've got the colours I want now. You know, I've got a red one, I've got a pink one, I've got a cream one, I've got copper, I've got bronze, I've got green, and I've got my little miniature one. So, oh, and yellow. So, you know, I've got the combination of colours. There we go. So that's that done, with a suitable gap at the top for pouring water in and not flooding all the bark over the sides of the pot. And this new growth is quite close to the edge, but there's room for it. This one is okay. This one is a bit too close really. But there's only so much you can do. Yeah? So if I'd cut the plant in half, then I could have put the cut half right up against the side of the pot, leaving the room for the new growths. Yeah? So that would have been a reason for splitting the plant. But I don't want to split the plant. I would prefer to have the large plant. Now I'm cutting that leaf because it's bent. It makes the plant look untidy. Okay, so that's it, it's done. That is the last one. The last of my Cymbidiums. Just having a tidy up now of these old tatty bits. Let's take some of them off if I can. Just make the plant look untidy. Leaving it nice and bright green. Some old flower spikes that can come off too. Most of what's left is green now, so the plant always looks better if all the parts are green. So there we go, a tidy up, a repot. Roots come down to about there. There is some of this media underneath the roots, followed by crocking, and if it chucks it down with rain for long periods, the water has got a way of escaping without backing up the pot, and there's plenty of room for new roots to go down into new media. So hopefully that will do okay. And yes, as I said, that is the last of the Cymbidium repots for a while. I won't say how long, depends how well they grow, because like I said, one of the reasons for repotting is they've reached the edge of the pot and there's no room for new growths. Yeah? So maybe some will reach that stage by the end of this year and need a repot at the beginning of next year as a consequence. That remains to be seen. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. And as I said, if you've got Cymbidiums, certainly in the UK, they benefit from going outside in the summer months. But you've got to balance where you put them. They like the bright light and they can tolerate some sun, preferably in the morning or in the late afternoon, evening. If you let them get sun in the morning, there is often morning dew on the plant. It's like a little bit of a benefit really, but obviously in the afternoon you wouldn't get that. I mean, some say that the sun on spots of water on leaves burns the leaves like little magnifying glasses. If that was the case, every bush in the wild would be covered in spots, wouldn't it? Because it rains and the sun comes out. It's cobblers. Absolute cobblers. Yes, so as far as they're growing in the UK is concerned, you've got two types. You've got the type that flower winter into early spring. Those will produce those new growths either while those flowers are still there or as the flowers fade. So their new growths are starting in the spring at the start of the growing season. Those are quite easy to handle. Obviously, once you get to a reasonable time of year, they can go outside. They'll benefit from the fresh air, some rain. Don't let it rain on them for weeks on end without feeding them, because they're growing. These are relatively heavy feeders when they're in active growth. Yeah? Then there's another type of Cymbidium that tends to bloom later in the year, so summer into autumn. And they need to be handled a bit differently, because they are often pushing their new growths up as you go into winter. And that's not when they're outside. So their growing season in the UK would be inside when the days are shorter. So they're not so easy to handle. Anyway, this is a late winter bloomer, and with 6 new growths on there, it would be nice if we had 6 spikes. That remains to be seen. But first thing that's got to happen is these spikes have got to produce, these growths have got to produce new root systems, nice healthy vigorous root systems in their nice new media, pushed hard with plenty of feed, and once they get to the mature stage and we're heading towards the end of summer, the light and combined with the cooler nights which you get, we don't notice them so much. You wouldn't think you had cooler nights in August, would you? Yeah, well, midsummer's back in June. We don't seem to see it. But August heading into September, the nights are cooler. Those cooler nights and the shorter day lengths, there are some, and the light will produce the embryo spikes in the maturing growths. You can't see them yet. They're not growing outside the plant yet. They're inside the new bulbs. And then those will be the spikes that will mature and bloom midwinter into spring. Most Cymbidiums come into that category. So, right, we'll see how this one gets on. Put its tag back in. It's not exactly an important tag, but it tells me what colour it is. It's just a hybrid, but it tells me which colour it is. So we'll pop that back in so that we know that this is the bronze one. And there we go. Sorry this wasn't in the kitchen. The plant's too big to be able to repot in the kitchen. I can't do kitchen time with the big plants because there's a cupboard in the way and the plant wouldn't fit underneath that overhanging cupboard, so it can't be done. But smaller and up to medium sized ones we can still do in the kitchen. So there will still be kitchen time, but that's the last of the Cymbidiums anyway for this year. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.